Live from the CK12 studios here in beautiful Palo Alto, California, it's Advanced Flexbook Editing. I'm Carl, one of the CK12 team members, and my colleague Katie and I will be running today's webinar. A reminder that this webinar is a core session for the CK12 Certified Educator Program. So there's an assignment for the session which can be found in the CEP Flexbook. Please be sure to preview the questions and make sure that you are set to answer them, as you'll need to work your way through the assignment in one sitting. Like our other sessions, we encourage you to use the chat window in Zoom to connect with others. Please make sure that you have selected all panelists and attendees, while the QA window is for questions for the CK12 team. So as I'm looking right now in the chat window, people are sending their introductions to only panelists. We remind you, we'd love you to send it to everybody. So go ahead and go to the little blue pull-down menu and choose all panelists and attendees, and we all get to see your beautiful comments. Once again, we do have a resource page for this webinar today, and you can find it at tinyurl.com/CK12ADVFB 2019. Once again, not case dependent, don't have to worry about that. All right, and we hope you use it not only today during the actual session, but as a reference afterward to help you remember all the great things that you've learned.
Thanks, Carl, and thank you to everyone who joined us for today's session on Advanced Flexbook Editing. So in our Getting Started with Flexbook session and the 2.0 platform, we covered the basics, including finding content on CK12, simple edits, and sharing your content with students and others. If you missed that session, I highly encourage you to watch the recording or join us for a future offering if we offer that throughout the school year. So today, we're going to start by talking about converting to and enhancing FlexBooks 2.0. We'll talk about adding content, updating details, uploading resources, and then swapping out practice and related modalities. We'll then cover adding clarity and formatted equations, so links, headers, tables, elements, and everything up to our CK12 math editor. We'll do a section on incorporating, formatting, and citing images, so what our Creative Commons license is, how you add in attributions, and how you choose figure and other options. And finally, we'll talk about embedding videos, interactives, inline questions, and more. So finding and using embed codes for multimedia across our system and beyond. So our main goal is that by the end of this session, you understand all of the options you have as you customize and enhance FlexBooks 2.0 on CK12.
But before we get into the core content of this webinar, it'd be great if we found out a little bit more about you and your knowledge of our editing tools. You'll see a poll here in a few seconds that we will ask about any customization you might have done already with CK12. So the first question is, did you join us for the Getting Started with FlexBooks in the 2.0 platform? Let's see if you've had that kind of foundational knowledge. And then the second question is, what experience do you have using and customizing CK12 FlexBooks? And this is please select all that apply. So you're welcome to check multiple ones there. And we'll give you a few seconds to do this, and we'll be waiting for everybody to check it on out. And I'll stop talking so you can focus. All right, about half of you have answered at this point. That's great. Beyond that, we'll wait for the other half. All right, we're going to give you just a few more seconds to finish this up. All right, let's go ahead and close the poll and let's share out what we've seen here. So I'm really happy that so many of you have seen the first live session, because this session's a lot more complicated if you haven't gotten the foundational content from the Getting Started one. Also, what is your experience? Most of you are new to the CK12 FlexBook and 2.0. And a few of you have used some of the Flexbooks, but this looks like you're in the right place because we're going to give you a lot of things. Now, you're going to get a lot of information today, and we're here to kind of give you an overview of what it is, but we really want you to be exposed to so much and really understand what's going on. All right, so let's go now. Given those results, let's refresh a few points about basic customizing of Flexbooks and Flexbooks 2.0. You'll see some of this again in the webinar as we work our way through, but we're happy to go through it if you have any questions. We'll focus on advanced components for this webinar. So you can customize and pick a title, delete and reorder content, click on the little X and use the drag arrows, add content via the menu with the editor when browsing CK12. You can also edit existing content and the pencil edit icon. And you can share Flexbook 2.0 via the URL, CK12 classes, integrated LMSs, PDFs, and so much more. Remember, the PDF download is coming soon, okay? You can also use the Assign button on any Flexbook 2.0 lesson to quickly assign the content to match and the matching practice to your CK12 or Google class if you want to see reports on that student progress. So with that, we want to welcome everybody from around the world tonight. I can see we have somebody here that's midnight in South Africa. So welcome, South Africa, and so many others of you who've joined us at 3 p.m. here in beautiful Palo Alto. But Katie, let's go learn some new things.
Thanks, Carl. So if we go into, as we said, this is really the more advanced topic piece. And for those of you, I know a handful of you that haven't had a chance to watch that initial one. We will focus on the advanced pieces, so you may do well to kind of soak this all in as I go through and then watch the recording, the original one, and then come back to this recording if you need to, because we will kind of try to cover as much as we can today just so you have access to it and really stick to those more advanced topics. So the first thing, when we're talking about converting and enhancing Flexbooks, is that if you don't have a single Flexbook 2.0 that you want to start with and you want to customize from there, you can take content from one or more of our original 1.0 books or our 2.0 Flexbooks and add them to your new book. Or you can start a new 2.0 Flexbook from scratch. So those are all options for kind of starting or converting. Once you have a book, you'll want to make sure your attributions are up to date, especially if you're pulling from multiple books. And you can even add in additional resources like a lab that you made if you own that you've created yourself. And from there, you can kind of see the matching practice. So if you swap out, or each lesson within math or science is tagged to an existing practice on CK12, but you have the option to swap that out for another concepts practice or to add a quiz you might have made. And then finally, you can remove or add related modalities. So you can add in more videos, interactives, or study guides to each lesson. Kind of given the previous ones that are chosen, you have the opportunity to move from there. So I think with that, I'm going to borrow this screen and share, and we're going to start kind of working our way around here. So let's say you like a 2.0 Flexbook. So I know our Algebra 2 book, if I look at Math by Level, the grade 8 through Geometry jumps me straight into those Flexbooks. So if I start with one of those Flexbooks, and if you're not sure about how I'm getting to some places, definitely review that beginning Flexbook one that walks through navigating and finding pieces. But once I get into a Flexbook, I have the option to customize this. So I can customize this. And now I have an interactive Algebra 2. Let's say my state doesn't use Common Core, so I can remove that. And maybe I'll just put a demo on July 16th. That way we know what this is. And I have all of this content in here that I can add, reorder, whatever I need to do. So I'm going to save this, and this is something you want to keep in mind. I'm either going to work within this editor piece, or I'm going to explore on CK12 and add. I know that we've gotten questions in the past from teachers who are saying, I was editing, and then I added, and I'm not seeing everything. Well, this is a revision that you're working on, and so if I want to make changes from outside, I want to save this. So I'm going to save that piece, and then I'm going to go explore. So I'm going to go back to CK12. And I really want something on finance. And I've explored all these books. I can explore math by subject and go down to analysis this way. Or I could explore kind of all of my original Flexbooks if the 2.0 ones didn't have everything I wanted. And I could say, what other content and resources could I pull from? So let's pull from that analysis piece and search our Flexbooks. And I'm going to pull from our pre-calculus book. Now, if it has the word concepts in it, it will have that attached practice. So I definitely recommend kind of starting from there. And I could add this whole book to a Flexbook. Within our original 1.0 environment, I could add a single chapter. So I could go to that finance and I can add this whole chapter or even a lesson. Because of the way the 2.0 books are structured, you can only add the entire book or individual lessons. But if you're trying to pull older content into that 2.0 environment, I can just add this single finance chapter. And you'll see that it pulls up any books that I've been working on. This one right at the top is the one I want to add it to. So I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to find that in my library. So if I go to my library, I can see this Interactive Algebra 2 book. And you'll see at the very bottom is that chapter on finance. So this still has the chapter level structure and all the individual sections, but it's not going to have any related modalities currently tagged to it because it didn't come from a 2.0 book that already had that tagging. So I would need to go in and add any from scratch from there. Now, if I go over and I look at my book details, you'll see that this just has kind of CK12 author, Common Core, Algebra 2. It doesn't have any of the details from my pre-calculus book. So if I went back to ck12.org and I open that book up again, I could do it from here. And I'm going to pull that pre-calculus textbook. Because I combined part of that book, I do want to make sure that I pull the attributions that I need from there. So I open this book again. I'm going to click over to those details. There we go. And you can see a description. I don't necessarily have to use that. What I do need to pull is my author and editor to make sure I'm pulling those attributions. So Mark and Caitlin Spong. And I can go into this book that I'm working off of, and I can edit it. And at the book level, you have your edit table of contents, and over here we have our details. So you can see a description there. I could adjust this. So I could say, this is an advanced math course combining algebra and pre-calculus. And then I'm going to add in my attributions. So another author was Mark Spong. And we had an editor, was Caitlin Spong. And so I want to make sure that I, at the very least, kind of add in those attributions so you're correctly following our CC BY NC license, and that BY stands for by, meaning I need to attribute my content. So I have this part here. At the book level, there's one other tab. It's my resource tab. And I could upload a file. So let's say I created an answer key on my own that I wanted to upload. I had some great culminating project for this class that I wanted to upload as a file. Just make sure any of those files that you're uploading, you own the rights to, or they're openly licensed so you can put them in there. Don't pull labs or resources from content that you've licensed from Pearson or McGraw-Hill or something else within there. So just kind of keep that in mind. And once I made those changes, let's say I wasn't going to use this advanced statistics supplement, I could remove that as well. Any of the other normal changes. And then I can save it. So I'm going to save at this level, and we're going to look at that book for a second. And you can see that this new description advanced math course is here. It's that's what I changed at that piece. You can also see that under the book details, I have both the author and editor that I added back in there. So that's kind of the book level changes that you'd want to be making. If I go back in, I can edit at the lesson level as well. So I'm going to show you one thing in terms of swapping practice from outside the book, and then we'll do it from within the book. So let's say I pick a section on polynomials. You'll see that there's some tagged related modalities. If I start this section, you'll see on the bottom right that I can view the matching practice that goes with that. And if I click on that, I have the option to choose a different practice by tagging it to a new concept, or to switch this to a quiz. So if I click on this, it will make me save this piece, kind of add that to my library if I haven't already been editing it. And then I can go in and I can swap out the practice from here. So I can switch that to a quiz and do, let's say, the quiz demo that I did earlier this morning. We could add that in, which would make 0 sense because it's on the water cycle, but that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. We do cover more extensively practice versus quizzes in that session, so definitely check that out if you're unfamiliar with the difference between the two of those. But that's one option for editing it. So then if I go back to my book, and I can do that kind of using these little breadcrumbs here or my table of contents, I'm going to jump back to this book, and I'm going to edit this book from here. Now, once again, at the book level, I have my edit options, I have my uploaded resources, and I have my details. If I go into that first section that I was editing, it's just going to kind of load all those pieces as we go through. And I think it was graphing polynomials that I was working on. So I'm going to open that section up. And I just need to click on it. There we go. And you'll see there are 4 tabs at the section level. So at the chapter level, really it's just the chapter title that you're going to ever update within 2.0. But at the book level, we have edit and resources and details. And at the section or lesson level, we have one more tab, and that tab is our related tab. So here you'll see 3 related modalities, the 2 original ones, that video and that interactive Plix. And then I swapped out that practice with a quiz. So in this case, you can see that right there. Now, if I removed that, I could always add that quiz back in by, instead of pulling detailed related modalities or stuff that I might have made myself, it looks like I have a different read that might be a supplement in my library that I could add in. But I could pull that quiz option there, and you can see a bunch of different choices. Let's say we're going to pull chapter 1 quiz because that might be more relevant. We're going to put that in there. So if I finalize this draft right here, I can go through and you can see that I have a bunch of different choices, but that the quiz here that just got swapped out is now my chapter 1 quiz. So there are a couple different ways to kind of change the content and pull 2 books together, pull quizzes or practice in there, update related modalities. Those are all options. The quizzes, you can do it from this kind of save state screen, or you can do it from within editing, but make sure that you're either in the edit mode or you're in the preview mode, that you're not trying to do one thing on one tab and one thing on another tab. So it looks like we're doing okay with questions. I think that I'm going to continue back into that lesson and do some editing work, just so you can see what the rest of that editing option looks like there. So let me go to a random section. Let's try revisiting right triangle trig, but I'm going to edit it. So I need to do that from the book level. And then I can open this section. And this bumps me into my editor. So I haven't done any edit work on this section yet. So the first thing it's going to do is allow me to change the title. You are not required to change the title, but I could change it if I wanted to. And then I'm going to save it. So regardless of whether you're a science or a math teacher, or I did this for when I was working on spelling content, if you want to add extra formatting for a bunch of different pieces, special characters, text options, or even our math editor, this whole editor window will allow you to do all of that. Now, if some of this stuff is grayed out, it's probably because I'm in the header option or in special formatted pieces. But if I click into regular paragraph text, I get a ton of options. So you have your standard bold, italic, underline, strike, subscript, superscript, text color options, highlight color options. We have our header, the like section 1 headers or subheaders, and then really most of the work you're going to do is in that paragraph piece. So those are all options to work your way through. I could also put special characters in here. So let's say I scrolled down here and I was talking about kind of workout number 1. We were talking about an angle of 90 degrees. So maybe I don't want to use the whole math editor. I just want a degree symbol. That's a great thing to pull from our special character menu. And I can do that right here. And now I have 90 degrees in there right away. Super simple, all set to go. I could create bullets, numbered lists, kind of all of those standard options as you're working your way through. But if I wanted other options like this, so here's an example of a math equation. So if I clicked on this, it would open up our math editor. And there's one thing you want to see here. Right now, this is just pulling up the coding for it and the preview of it. But if you create a brand new equation, let's say I wanted to create an equation from scratch, I could do so by clicking on our math editor. And there are two options when you're creating an equation from scratch. Option A is to use our drop-down menu, and option B is to use the code. So this would be where you'd put your code, and up here you'd use your drop-down menu. So let's say I wanted my function, f of x, and then I could do equals sine of x. So I'd go into this option, and I could say x here. So I could preview this. Inline would just be in line with whatever text is there. Align at would put me on the left side, and block math would center that on a new line. So all sorts of options. So if you aren't familiar, if you didn't want to change this to say, let's say theta or something like that, I could actually even do that from here. Could put that theta in there. You can kind of play around with the text within here, but you do need to understand that your drop-down kind of fill-in option at the top is lost once you start working with the code, because that drop-down feeds the code, but it doesn't work the opposite way. So just kind of keep that in mind, and then I can add that in. So all sorts of options for formatted text in terms of math editor, for special characters. We have other options for menu. So let's say at the bottom of this, we had a discussion. So right here, you'll see kind of embedded multimedia. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's say I had a real world application. So ck12.org, and then I wanted to look up for trig real world. Could pull some stuff, maybe add that in. For 2.0 in general, I would probably add those as related modalities, but I could just put a simple link. So let's say this particular resource. So whether that is a resource from within CK12 or outside of CK12, I could copy this URL. I could go back here and I could say, check out this real world application. And I could even just select that text and highlight it and hyperlink it accordingly. Now I do have the option to open that. I'm going to fix this P to open it kind of with immediately taking the place, or I could open it in a new window and it would add an extra tab for that student. I could also add some element boxes. So I find these super helpful. So these are examples. Kind of down at the end of this is, I think, a like summary part. So our review, maybe I want to do kind of summary. So I could make this a section 1. I could then bump into my paragraph, and I could create an element box. So I could say, well, we're talking right triangle trig. The Pythagorean theorem might be useful. So I could insert an element box with the Pythagorean theorem. And then I could go back to that math editor and add pieces in from here. So if I open this up, I could say kind of a squared, and I could do this squared option. So that would get a little complicated if for some reason I said, oh, I need to clear that all, I need to start over again. Let's just kind of start from scratch. So I'm going to put this in. We have something squared, but that's just x squared. So something squared plus b squared equals c squared, and then I can fill in a squared, b squared, c squared, and now I have a beautiful Pythagorean theorem. So I can add that in, and those are super helpful in terms of kind of those resources and quick glances at stuff. I could also create something that included a table. So let's add a table in here. And maybe we had sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. And I can right click on that and look at my table properties and add a border. I could add kind of a little caption at the top that says like your trig ratios. So all sorts of options as you're working your way through. I could, instead of doing this as a table, I could do this as a set of definitions. And so here's a definition list. So maybe we have our term is trigonometric ratio, not ration. And we're going to have, this is something that relates the angle to a ratio of 2 sides. And I can continue that of a right triangle. And then I can bump back and forth using my decrease increase indent if I'm within there. So I could put hypotenuse and then that definition and bump back and forth. Or I could simply hit enter and add a new definition, term, and definition in there. So you have all sorts of options within here. There is like a horizontal line option here. I could add a page break, which isn't really necessary unless you're trying to break it in a downloaded PDF. But I highly recommend exploring these options as you work your way through so that you can see kind of what these look like. And if I finalize this, keeping as draft kind of saves my work in progress. Finalizing it means anyone who has access to that book can access it. And now I can see all the pieces that I worked on and inserted in here for that clarity and formatting of equations. So if we scroll down this piece, we have our initial part. We have my random angle of 90 degrees here. We have the extra random equation I added in there. Then I, somewhere in here, put a real-world application link. And then as we scroll all the way down, we see our nice little Pythagorean theorem piece, my formula table, my definitions, and review. So all sorts of options if you want to try to add clarity and work your way through. So I think maybe that's a good time to stop for some questions, and we'll see how we're doing.
Excellent. Yeah, we've got a lot of interesting things going on here. And I think the first one I'd love you to answer is, one of our users has labs for only his class. Can they incorporate the labs that they've purchased from somewhere else like Flynn?
So our copyright doesn't allow you to put content that you've licensed or purchased from someone else within our Flexbooks. That hyperlink option is a great resource for there. I know some teachers, I think that use, especially some practice options, have used hyperlinks out, and then the student would have access. So here's the hyperlink to the real world application. If I click on that, it opens that in a new tab. They get to that real world application. You can do the same thing for something that's licensed, and then the students would hit like a paywall at that particular point, or a login at that particular point. You cannot put content in our practice, in our textbooks, in anything that you're accessing on our site that you have purchased or licensed from someone else. That doesn't fit within our license.
All right, and I think I'm going to go ahead and answer one of the questions. There was a question of how to make both superscript and subscript at the same time, and that isn't available from our LaTeX editor. It's not currently one of the little things there. So what I encourage you to do, I'm going to show you on my screen here exactly how I went and found an answer to this, and it's good for a lot of different things. So just type in LaTeX, and then superscript and subscript comes up there, and let's go into the first hit. And you're going to see here an example of exactly the code that you're going to need in order to do superscript and subscript at the same time. This is also true if you want any of the other chemistry things like a long arrow. So if you went back and typed in long arrow, okay, you would be able to see the LaTeX and its left, right arrow, and there's all these different characters and things that we don't have a little button for, but you can add in the text part of our math editor. So that is one of the options there. All right, and then Katie, let's go back and answer some more questions. Are the related modalities automatically available to students?
Sure. So these related modalities, so this trig lesson came from a 2.0 book. Those related modalities are already built in. If I went back for a second and I looked at a lesson from that finance chapter, remember that finance chapter came from somewhere else. So let's edit this particular piece. It looks like I need to update and refresh some stuff. But if I go in here, you'll see that there's no related modality tab. There's no content within here already. So I can add content, I can add modalities, and it's gonna pull, it looks like there's a real world application and another read that might be useful. So the sections that don't have that content already, you can pull any resources from CK12, but they're not necessarily available there immediately unless it came from a 2.0 Flexbook.
And here's a follow-up question. Is the resource tab of an overall tab for a book, or is there a resource tab for each chapter and lesson so they can be viewed in sequence?
So this particular one, the resource tab is available per lesson. So in this case, this particular chapter used to be chapter 13 in that pre-calc book. That's why it's showing that answer key resource for there. If I keep this as a draft and bump back into the book editor, you'll see the resource tab for this book. If I wanted to try to edit for a chapter, note this right here. It says chapters can be used to group concepts in Flexbook 2.0, but you don't want to touch any of the rest of this stuff because that was from our older 1.0 books, and none of that is surfaced. It's just the chapter level that you're working with, the title that you'd edit. So I would say your options are at the book level or at an individual section level.
And once again, what would you use the related modality tab for?
Sure. So let me pull that back up. Let's go back into the section I was working on. And it will load faster because it's not having to make a copy. So there's a couple things right here. So right here you can see this related modality has this, looks like it's a study guide icon, a real world application, a video, another video, and 3 Plix interactive. So those are all things that relate to this lesson. If I go into the lesson itself, it looks like, let's see what this preview is. So if I edit this embedded, you can see it looks like it's loading maybe that a Plix interactive option. So there's some stuff embedded already, but definitely if you want to kind of make other resources available for that, then they'd be able to see that there.
Great. So thanks, Katie. I think we're going to stop here now and continue on. I want to show you 2 different videos of teachers customizing Flexbooks to best meet the needs of their students. I'm going to go take back the window here from you, and let's go. Hold on a second here. Sorry. There you go. I'm just going to steal back the window from Katie. Little technical issue there. There it is. All right. And we're going to watch 2 videos. The first clip is a social studies teacher, and she's in Tullahoma, Tennessee, and the second's of a chemistry teacher in El Paso, Texas.
You gotta reshare your audio.
All right, the technical difficulties continue here, so we'll just go back and try that again. Try it again. There you go.
We were asked to reorganize.
My favorite thing about it is you can update, change content, adapt to what you need for that classroom. If I have some content on there that I think is not working, or the students don't like, or that I don't like, that it's just, for whatever reason, it's not working the way I thought it would, I can find other stuff and use other stuff to change those chapters and change the format of everything. I can also upload videos anytime I want to there, upload any pictures that I need on there, any other resources, you know, as needed. So that's what I like the most, but I can kind of form it the way I want to.
We were asked to reorganize the Flexbook that was already there and adapt it completely to EPISD and our curriculum, our scope and sequence. We added things that were student-friendly, we added videos, and I think that was a really good experience because as a chemistry teacher, I knew what my kids were needing as far as a textbook, as far as content went. And I could rely on the textbook to have videos and interactives and any kind of visual that I thought they needed that they couldn't get in a standard textbook.
All right, let's have Katie show you some of the components of adding new images to your Flexbooks.
Thanks, Carl. So I'm going to just kind of go through these screens first, and we are going to talk about kind of adding images to start. These are the pop-ups that you get. So we recently updated this, so it's easier for you to find where to put your attributions. We're updating them to match these screens in the practice, so go ahead and kind of use these as your template of where you'll be. But on that first tab, you'll want to upload the image file. So this is recommended as an upload instead of pointing to a URL, because websites do change and that URL might break. But if you upload an image that you have the rights to use, then it won't break within our system. So we definitely recommend that. Then below that, you'll see the options for noting the license and the source credit for an image that is required in order to upload an image. So you will have to fill that out. And then on the options tab, you see choices for the type of image, figure versus inline, alt text, etc. So all sorts of options. So I think with that, I'm gonna share my screen and we're gonna jump into CK12 and show you what that looks like. So let's pick a new topic. I can go to, let's say, physical science. So if I pull up my science book, I can edit this book or customize this book if I'm starting from scratch. And if I go into a section, let's pick a section on pulleys. So once again, you just have to remember that you're going to be inside that read and not in a header. So here's an example. This particular section, if I look at this, I can click on it, click on the image, and it will pull up all of the information. You see that the source is CK12 Foundation. This was an image that one of our wonderful interns uploaded. This file was uploaded cleanly, and then there's some options in terms of this being inline and the pixel width and whatever. Let's say I accidentally deleted that image and I needed to re-upload that image. If I'm up here, it gets a little complicated, so I definitely recommend that you do this in regular text, but I'm gonna start by choosing that file. So I can pull this pulley image up and we can add that in. Now there's two options right now. So your option is you hold the copyright. So in this case, CK12 holds that copyright. This is one of our kind of interns that was working with us. So we're gonna do that. I'm gonna put in CK12 as my source and Zach Wilson as the credit for that. So for you, you could put CK12 if it's the only source or kind of internal piece, your name if you owned it. And I click, I agree to license this image to CK12. So there's kind of a little bit of distinction in there. If you have any questions about the license you're uploading anything under, please check our terms of use. And all of our users are going to see it under the CC BY NC license. That means that they can use it, they can customize it, they have to give you credit or credit to whoever that piece is coming from, and they can't sell it under that license. So that's one option. The other option would be that I don't hold the copyright. And we accept three options basically into our image system. One is something in the public domain. That means it's fair game to use. It's, there's no copyright restrictions on it. One where the only restriction on it is that you attribute it correctly, and one where you're attributing it and the SA stands for share alike. So if I pick any of these, it will fill this in. I do still have to put the source and the credit that goes with that. But if I choose none of the above, if it doesn't fit under any of those, you get a little message that says we don't accept third-party images that are not in the public domain. So make sure that you either hold the copyright or it fits one of those pieces. I'm going to go back to I hold the copyright because I do in this case. And this image is pretty large, but I could do this as a figure image. So I'm going to click over to that image option piece. Once again, I'm going through this really quickly just to give you a quick overview and information as you work your way through. But go ahead and play around with this and come back, reference that resource page, reference this video. But I just want to make sure we cover all your options so you can see what they are. So here's your figure option. Here's your inline option. For figure, my options are postcard. That's kind of like a standard picture size. Thumbnail would be a little teeny little thumbnail, or full page. And that full page is based on width. So if I insert this made a note that I've already uploaded this image before, so it's going to pull the attribution already in the system. Totally fine. But this is a massive image now because this image is a tall image and not as wide. So remember that when you're doing anything for kind of image pieces, it's working based on the width of that image. So I'm going to say, not super helpful. Let's go back in and let's change that to an inline image. So I could do full page. So kind of we get a couple options. So figure, go back to our postcard, inline. We have some options. My width might be 400. And it looks like I have a little glitch there. So let me go ahead and re-upload that in 2 seconds so that we have this piece here. I'm going to add in that copyright again because that is super important and I cannot emphasize that enough. So it's not a problem. And then I can make this inline. And I could say, let's shrink that to maybe 200 pixels wide. Your alt text would be something hovering over that image. So that's super useful for anyone using a text-to-speech option that needs accommodations for different pieces. And I'm going to go ahead and insert that. So now that image is back in my system. So as you're working your way through, as I said, I recommend uploading the image cleanly, make sure that it fits one of our attributions. I know there's tons of questions on copyright and what you can and can't use. Right down here, it says terms of use. I recommend checking that out. But our general license that we license pictures externally, unless they have a set image license, is that CC BY NC. And that is Creative Commons non-commercial use. And so if you have any questions, go ahead and check that out as well. But so let's take a minute to answer some questions that we have in here before we go into embedding other media.
Can you show again how to insert the element box?
Sure. So within here, let's say I wanted to put a definition of a pulley. That element box is this little kind of square thing with a blue top. It's right there. And I could say pulley and type in, what is a pulley? So that, go ahead and kind of adds that piece right there.
All right, the next question is, what happens if you've edited a Flexbook and then a Flexbook is updated by CK12? Do you have to go back and remake all your edits again on the new updated version?
So let me save this as a draft for a second. So this is the section on pulleys. This section, I have customized content within this lesson. And CK12's philosophy is basically that if you choose to change something in our system, we think you know what's best for your students and your class. And so we are not going to override that piece. So if I look at this chapter, you'll see in chapter 13, right now it's a draft. I could finalize it and have that stuff. But this section, 312, has my own content in it. All of these other sections are effectively shortcut pointers to the existing content. So if all you did was change your scope and sequence, you just kind of reordered this, I said this went here, then if we updated the inclined plane read, you'd get a little notice that said, you're not looking at the most recent version of this. But for pulley, you've now made your own copy, you've made your own changes. If we update the original read, it will not be reflected in your book. So that's kind of the difference between just taking stuff and rearranging the scope and sequence and getting any update notifications, and something where you've changed it and we do not in any way, shape, or form want to overwrite the changes that you made. So that kind of stays as is once you've made those changes.
So a couple questions on copyright and images on CK12. I know all of a sudden we all become lawyers here at this point because we're trying to do this correctly. First is, are there any size limitations on images on CK12?
I have yet to hear of a size limitation. I do recommend if you have a file that's like massively large, you may have trouble uploading it, but in general, any kind of standard file size should be working fine.
And Melissa's asking, so do we click I own the copyright for CK12 images?
So CK12 images that are already in our system should have the copyright attached to them. This came up recently, and we're working to make that a little cleaner within those two binary choices for something that already exists within CK12. But for right now, that copyright should already be within CK12, so you want to kind of match the copyright for whatever it's licensed. If it says it's CC BY 2.0 or like CC BY or CC BY NC, you'd kind of make that choice as you go through.
And we have another request here. Can you please explain the 3 options for copyright again? It was a little fast.
Sure, let me go back into that section that I was just looking at. And as I said, these options, so if you have any questions about these options, I recommend that you try to upload an image and it will give you this menu. So when we did this session in previous years, everyone said, I have so many questions, I'm not sure what to do, I don't know which ones I can license. So we tried to make this as clear as possible. This is kind of, I hold the copyright. For other options, these are your only options. CC0, CC BY SA. That's what you can upload into our system if it's not something that you own or that's already in our system elsewhere. If you have any questions, literally just Google CC0, CC BY SA, and it will bring you to something like this page where we have the Creative Commons license, and it will tell you what that license is. If I was going to go, because I know this is a big thing, if I was going to go like to Flickr, and I wanted to search for pulleys, let's say, I can add advanced search. I can pick, okay, I need this to have commercial use and modifications allowed, and I can kind of look into different pieces, and then they do a good job. So this one right now, if I click on this some rights reserved, it will tell me what license this is under. This is under the CC BY SA. So that would be acceptable. You could download this image. You could pull the author or the photographer in this case here, you could click share on Flickr and it gives you a short little share link that has all of those pieces that you're working with. Some sites do a really good, clean job of labeling what their license is on images. Other ones do not. So you may need to pay a little bit of attention as you go through that.
All right, so I think for now we're going to continue here and switch back to our next topic of embedding within CK12.
So you can embed, as I was saying, multiple types of media. So our first option is you could embed videos from YouTube or other platforms. You could embed simulations from CK12 or elsewhere that you could launch in a new window if you wanted to do that for RSIMs. You could embed two different types of Plix, and I'll talk about this as we go through, just kind of the basic interactive component of the Plix or the full Plix that students can work with. And then you can also embed other media such as Google Slides presentations. Those allow you to pull an embed code and kind of just the only thing you want to make sure is that if you made that presentation and you're adding it to your Flexbook, it doesn't add in and you didn't include any copyrighted material as you work your way through there. So that's option one. The other thing you can do is you can attach practice and quizzes. So we've talked about swapping that practice for a quiz or an alternate practice. Or you can embed quizzes as an inline question piece. So those don't work quite like a quiz in that students have multiple attempts. Progress isn't necessarily reported to the teacher, but those are different pieces as you work your way through. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen again. And I am going to go from here and we have the share option. So hopefully you guys can see this screen. We were working on that pulley piece. So let's talk about some options. So within this particular part, let's say we have a video right here. So this is a YouTube video. So let's say I actually pull this YouTube link. I'm just going to pull it for a second and open it in a new tab so you can see it. And that's the video that I was working off of. From here, you can see that I have the embed code for this YouTube video. So I can, if I actually finalize this draft for a second, you'll be able to see what that looks like. And I'm going to kind of walk through a couple of pieces. But I could open any of those videos. I could say, okay, here's this video. If I opened it on YouTube, because it kind of opened from that in a little bit different setting. So I want to make sure I pull the standard one. Within YouTube, I can simply share this and I can copy this link. So if I go back into editing for now, YouTube's kind of the simplest option. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to edit. I'm going to pull up that section. And we're probably going to stay in there for a little while just so that we can play around with all the different embedding options as we work our way through. So if I edit this pulley piece, I could simply paste that. Let's say I accidentally deleted this video. I can simply paste this part. Let's scroll up so you can see it a little better. And if I paste a YouTube link, it will automatically embed that YouTube link. We assume that if you're putting a YouTube link in there, you probably actually want the video within that part. So that's fair game to do. The other option, if I was pulling from YouTube, is let's say I wanted to do this video, but I wanted to start it like at a minute or 9 seconds or something like that. I could share this, and then under the embed option, there's not only the option to pull the embed code, but you could actually click the start at a certain time, and then when you pull the embed code, it will actually include that particular piece. And so here, I could, when I'm in here, click this embed media option, paste that embed code, double check, yep, that's the right video that I'm working with, and I can insert that video. So you have options to do that piece, kind of pulling from an embed code or just simply putting a YouTube video there. If I scroll down through here, you can see there's another interactive component. And anytime you want to check what it is, just click on that insert media, preview it. This looks like it's a CK12 simulation about using pulleys. So that's already in there. If I went to ck12.org/sims, and I wanted to search for ones on police. So maybe I want to use this one instead. Within our sims and our Plix, you have the option up in this ellipses to pull your embed code right here. So definitely check that out. I can copy that embed code. I can add this simulation to it. So I'm going to simply copy that. I'm going to, right after this, paste, oops, not within there. That will not help me. And not in an image, but under the play button, I can paste that embed code. And now I'll be able to see that simulation there. For Plix, it's a little different. So let's say we go to ck12.org/Plix and we explore our Plix, or I used our explore menus to get there. And if I wanted to pull one up on pulleys from here, I could say maybe I'm going to use this particular Plix. There are two options when you're trying to embed a Plix. So one option is to embed this whole Plix that launches, and the other option is just to embed just this interactive window. So if I pull this embed code, so same deal, I clicked the same set of ellipses at the top, clicked embed. I'm going to copy just the basic one to my clipboard, basic Plix, and embed that. And then right after that, I'm going to copy the full Plix and embed that, just so you can see kind of what the difference is. And I'm going to embed this piece. And under the basic Plix, maybe I want to put some inline questions. So we talked a lot in another session, I'm going to go to CK12, about creating your own quizzes. So if you did not join us for a quiz session, definitely check that one out so you can understand where these quizzes are coming from. But if I've created my own quiz, I think I made one on pulleys, but maybe not. Let's say I'll just use this particular one. I can use these questions within here. And I can pull an embed code for those questions under here. So if I pulled this embed code for these questions, I can put that part there as well. So inline questions, embed codes, there's all sorts of embed code options. And you're just going to see kind of all of these in one shot when I finish. And maybe I even want my own presentation wrap up. So this is where I was talking about Google Slides. If I click on a Google Slides presentation, I have the option to click File, Publish to the Web. Once I've clicked the Publish option, which in this case I've already published it to the web, I can click on Embed. And you once again get the same like random string of embed code pieces. So what I would say for all of you guys that just said you just pulled embed codes from 20 different places and I have no idea what you just did, depending on what you're working with, whether it is a video, a simulation, our Plix interactives, our inline questions, a Google Slides presentation, anything that you have the rights to embed elsewhere, you are welcome to do so in our system. Technically, that works. That's totally an option. And let's scroll down here and we'll show you what those look like. Here is this video that starts right at the beginning at 0 seconds. This video jumped to 1 minute and 9 seconds because I pulled an embed code that had that piece. If I scroll down, it looks like I added the same simulation twice because it was in there once and I added it in. And here is a basic Plix where I can try that Plix out directly within the lesson. I added some questions after that make no sense with pulleys, but we have some pieces here where students can actually try these questions out. They can try it again, see if they get the right answer. This is where we recommend feedback. I could launch a full Plix in a new window. And then I could escape out of that and go back to that. Or I could even see my Google Slides presentation. So all of these are options to embed that media. I think we may answer a couple questions here and then do some wrap up and stay on for any extra questions if you want me to walk through anything slower.
Sure. Katie, there's a question here. What are the limitations relative to embedding YouTube videos? I imagine some are copyrighted.
So my biggest recommendation for YouTube videos is to avoid copyrighted content if you can at all costs, basically. Some content is copyrighted on YouTube. YouTube does a pretty good job stripping that content. And if you have put copyrighted content in your book, you will find a this is no longer available due to copyright infringement notice on your video. So this video is fair game. We used it. A lot of our videos we either created ourselves or partnered with, or, talked to teachers to use. But if you're putting copyrighted content, YouTube may very cleanly strip that content out of there shortly, and you'll end up with just a blank, sorry, we can't play this content window.
Another interesting thing came in, wondering if they can't upload a lab into a CK12 book by providing a link, which then links to Google Classroom, which requires a sign-in. Would this be okay?
Yeah, so if you're hosting something in a platform that it is allowed to be hosted in, you can link out to that. If you're putting content directly in our platform, it needs to fit under our license. So that's kind of the distinction between saying, oh, I recommend you check out this resource, and if you have access, great. And I recommend, or I'm putting it within our license.
Yeah, and I've heard of people using Discovery Ed and having links to Discovery Ed, and that requires a separate sign-in, so that's fine in terms of the copyright. And there's another question here. If I took a pic, how do I enter a copyright? Do I have a copyright on my own picture?
Yeah, so that's where that I own this copyright, and if you upload it to our system, you can just put CK12 as kind of where it's putting if it doesn't exist elsewhere, but that you definitely want to put your own piece, or you can kind of say like owner, owned internally, like not hosted elsewhere, or some kind of notice, but you definitely want to attribute it to yourself so that other users know where it is coming from.
Great, and I think I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. We're going to wrap this up, and then anybody that has any remaining questions in the Q&A window, we can go ahead and answer those. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm sharing my screen, and we're going to talk about publishing here.
Thanks, Carl. So I want to talk about kind of in this core part of the webinar, talk about publishing and accessing your books. So the first thing that I recommend is that whenever you get to a point that you think you want your content to be shared, I recommend that you publish it. You can assign it to students while you're still working on it, but definitely we encourage you to do that. So the first question is, how do you publish it? So in a 2.0 Flexbook, under that choose option, you click publish. That happens once. Once you published it, is now available. So kind of in that 2.0 version, that book becomes available via search. And then really the why you would do this is this makes it easily accessible for others to access, kind of beyond anyone that you've assigned it or directly shared it with. And you're adding to the resources within CK12. So there's some really cool non-STEM books on our site that other users have published. So we encourage you to, especially if you're doing a lot of customization, republish your work to our site. And at the end, you can add that to your schools page. So you can add published content so your students can find all of their resources in one place. That schools page, like here's two examples, El Paso Independent, Coeur d'Alene Public Schools. Those have a lot of resources. They're great references. They do a lot of good work. So that might be a good place to check out. And then even if you don't necessarily do that, if you don't have a schools page, you're saying, we don't have one yet, what do I do? You can email support. So as you go in, there's a little template that you can fill out, and you want to claim, go to tinyurl.com, CK12 claim school, but that's on our help desk. So you don't have to remember that or anything. And then you just need to send an email and we'll get that set up with you. So I think I'm going to let Carl wrap up some key pieces for the program, and then we'll go on and answer questions.
Great. Well, we've learned so much here today. We want to remind you, here once again is this beautiful resource page that you can use to remind you about everything you've learned, tinyurl.com/CK12ADVFB2019. Also, we have some upcoming sessions coming up here. We've got Common Core Math, and we've got community contributed and non-STEM content coming up. I think we've done all of the getting started with Flexbooks at this time. So check your schedule and see. You can always add to what you signed up for by going to the registration page again. All right, we also have some LMS integration sessions coming up on Google Canvas and Schoology. I've heard so many questions about that, and we're really excited that we're about to offer a Flexbook 2.0 integration to Canvas and Schoology. Case studies, we have tomorrow at 1 p.m. California time, CK12 for homeschoolers. And then on Thursday at 11, we have CK12 for independent schools. Once again, of course, there is a session assignment. You'll find it in the CK12 Certified Educator Program book. And go ahead and click into that there. As always, it's called a quiz there to get started, but you'll preview all the questions in the lesson for advanced Flexbook editing. And then at one session, you'll sit down and put in all of your answers. As always, please give us feedback. Your feedback is so important to making this better. We know that like on an advanced Flexbook editing session like today, there's so much information. So we encourage you to give us some feedback, but also rewatch the session. You can see right in the little window there, watch now as an opportunity. And about 24 hours from now, it'll be there and you can go back and rewatch any part that was confusing or email us at support@ck12.org. We ask that you partner with us. Please pilot our new interactive Common Core Flexbook 2.0s. Pilot any Flexbook 2.0 because our system is intelligent. And by using that intelligence, the more you use it, the more intelligent it becomes. We encourage you to adopt CK12 like so many schools and districts have as your full curriculum. Really use the CK12 platform to its full extent. Create new Flexbook 2.0 that will be your version of the content, whether it's for an area that CK12 already has content for, or a brand new area that you're bringing all the content and you're using CK12 as the platform to deliver the content to your students. Please invite us to see your beautiful work that you've done. And we want to see CK12 in action in your classrooms, in your schools, and in your district. Please let us know by emailing jumpstart@ck12.org. And then, of course, share feedback. We are always looking for people doing efficacy and figuring out, will CK12 help us improve our state testing scores by 20%? That's the kind of thing we would love to hear from you. So please reach out to us for any of that kind of content. So from all of us here, this has been an amazing day. We've answered 114 questions so far. That's crazy. I can hear the typing going away from Star's fingers across the way, and I know Felix helped us out, and so many people make this possible. Please do tweet about us and post on Facebook. Be sure to tag CK12 Foundation and the hashtag CK12 Certified. So before we go, Katie, I think we have a couple more questions.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, I'm going to try to work my way through a couple of these. So I noted two different Plix to compare, and I think I breezed through this so fast that you guys missed it. So the basic Plix, note how I said basic Plix is right here. That Plix is available directly within the lesson. You can see kind of a brief description and you can actually play around with that. This is a great place for writing your own questions and including them as inline questions below it if you want to follow up with that Plix. But the full Plix that I added here, I would actually launch that entire Plix into a new window. And this Plix has a brief little description and the kind of play around piece here, but it also has challenge questions. So this is the case where students could go through, they could work their way through their learning activities. So we show them the right answer right away. I'm clearly not even reading these questions, so I'm doing miserably. But this is the full Plix environment with those questions as well versus the single Plix, just interactive component that you play with right there. So that's kind of the difference there. We have some questions on these inline quizzes. This inline content is not graded. If you want a grade for any quiz or customized practice that you make, you do need to assign that separately, or you need to swap the practice out here with the quiz. If you just include it inline, this is really to help students learn. It's to give them more feedback. We recommend adding feedback to questions there, but it is not graded. You'd have to grade that separately. And speaking of assignments, as you're working your way through, we have a question about assigning to Flexbooks and making changes. So there were a couple different pieces about assigning and publishing and where does that go. So let's talk about those in general. This particular section, if I assign this, I am assigning this section with this current content to my students. That means that when they access that assignment, they're going to see the content included in here. They're going to see the attached practice included in here, whatever that current set is. If they access that book and you have updated that content, then they might be looking at kind of that book with the newer content. But if they're accessing it from their assignment portal, they're going to see whatever you assign to them at that particular moment. They're not going to see kind of any updated pieces there because they're seeing what you assigned from that point. If you share that with others and you finalize any changes you make, anyone with that link will see those finalized versions. So kind of just keep that part in mind as you work your way through. And then there were a bunch of questions on the teacher edition versus student edition. If there is a teacher edition for a book, because some of our older books have both, you would, if you're making updates, I recommend making updates to the student edition. That's the one that you'd be sharing with your students. You could keep the teacher edition as a resource. You could start incorporating that into lesson plans within your new 2.0 environment for teachers, but you definitely would need to do those separately as you go through. And then we have a question about inline versus practice versus quiz, instead of having to listen to the whole video again. Yes, check out that resource page. So if I go to tinyurl.com/CK12 custom AP, if I remember this correctly, from our customizing practice session, we have our info about practice, our info about practice and quizzes here, and then information about inline questions. They are all available in that resource sheet. And I highly recommend that you check out kind of all of those resource pages in our Certified Educator book, because those are that quick reference so that you don't have to go back and watch this whole video if you just need a quick refresher.
Well, I think we've cleared out the Q&A window, and I know there was even a person on from India where it's like 4:30 in the morning now. So I think it's time for a few people to go to bed and for us to get ready for a big day tomorrow here at the CEP program. So from all of us here, we look forward to working with you again tomorrow. Have a good day.